Good morning. Today I'm going to be cooking the Sembian honey-glazed raute ribs from Hero's Feast, the official Dungeons & Dragons cookbook. Published in 2020, this cookbook is full of some fantastic pictures and some interesting looking recipes. But are they any good? Or is this just another coffee table companion for your D&D book collection? The recipe calls for cleaning and grating one whole yellow onion. Grating the yellow onion is going to allow the onion to break down as it's cooking in the sauce so that you don't end up with like chunks of onion, so that you end up with a more uniform glaze to go over these ribs. Once the onion is grated in the bowl and set aside, we're going to mince 5 cloves of garlic. With the garlic minced and in the bowl, next I'm going to add just a bit of salt. I'm going to mix that up so that the salt can begin breaking down the cell walls of the garlic and the onions. Setting the onions aside, we're going to begin to combine the wet ingredients. Start off with a little bit of Worcestershire, some apple cider vinegar, some Dijon mustard that I can't seem to quite keep in frame, quite a bit more ketchup than I personally think is necessary, but hey, we're following the recipe. Let's see what happens. And finally, some honey. Once everything's in the bowl, I'm going to give it a nice little stir until everything's combined. Next up, the spices. I'm going to start off with some chili powder, smoked paprika, and a pinch of cayenne. With the mise en place for the glaze ready, now it's time to turn my attention to the ribs. I'm going to check them over to make sure there's no weird chunks of fat, silver skin, or any membranes that may have been left. Next, I'm going to transfer the ribs to the baking sheet with a rack on top. Get them all straight here. And season both sides liberally with some nice flaky sea salt and fresh cracked black pepper. Meanwhile, back at the range, I'm going to heat up a pan over medium-high heat and add some neutral flavored cooking oil. Using neutral flavored cooking oil here will keep the oil from getting in the way of the onions and spices and sauce here. The onions go in the pan, spreading it out in a single layer and cooking them until they are translucent. Once the onions are translucent, in goes the spice mixture. Stir to combine and cook this until the spices become aromatic. Once I can really smell those spices, in goes that ketchup and honey mixture. Again, stirring to combine well, and we're going to let this cook until it gets nice and thick. And you can see after a while the sauce has cooked down and thickened. It kind of holds its shape as I drag my spoon through it. It's kind of what you're looking for. As this cools down, the sauce will thicken. So I'm going to keep that in mind at this point and take it off the heat. Starting with the bone side of the ribs up, I'm going to slather on about a quarter cup of this glaze. After that, I'm going to flip them over and put on about a half cup of the glaze, according to the recipe. On the Once this glaze is slathered on there, the ribs are going to go in the oven at 205 degrees Fahrenheit for about 3 hours. I'm going to pull them out after that 3 hours and put on the rest of the glaze. According to the recipe, we should have about a quarter cup left. After we get the last of the glaze on there, I'm going to slide these things back in the oven for just a few minutes at a higher temp just to caramelize that last little bit of glaze. The ribs came out of the oven looking and smelling just great. Cut in between the bones to get the individual ribs. And you can see here, they're still tender, juicy, and meaty. It was at this point I couldn't help myself. I just had to try a bite fresh out of the oven. And they are good. I have a feeling that this isn't the best recipe in this book. After it was all said and done, these ribs were good, but that was about it. They weren't the best I ever had, and they were by a long shot not the worst I've ever had. Even though they weren't the best ribs I've ever had, they were worth the time and effort it took to put them together. And that leads me to believe that there might be some other recipes in this book that would also be worth the time and effort it takes to prepare them. So, this book may not be just another coffee table book. It might be worth your time and effort to peruse and to figure out a few recipes to add another element to your game night. I'm curious to know if anyone else has tried this recipe and what they think of them. Comment below, please. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.